The galaxy's final refuge was a human-crafted starship of hope. The stars were dying, and nobody knew how to stop it. Captain Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, watching another sun blink out of existence on the display screen. It happened quickly, like someone turning off a light switch. One moment the star burned bright and hot. The next moment nothing but cold darkness remained. Somewhere around that dead star, billions of lives had just ended. "That's the 15th system this week," said Da-eun, the ship's chief engineer. She didn't look up from her console. Her fingers moved across the controls, trying to understand what they were seeing. "The pattern is getting worse. It's moving faster now." Hyun-woo felt his chest tighten. He had been a starship captain for 20 years, and he had seen plenty of terrible things. War, plague, whole planets destroyed by natural disasters. But this was different. This was the end of everything. The galaxy called it the Void Cascade. Some scientists said it was a natural phenomenon, something to do with dark energy and quantum physics that nobody really understood. Others whispered that it was alive, that something ancient and hungry was eating the universe from the inside out. The official name didn't matter much. What mattered was that it couldn't be stopped. The Galactic Council had tried everything. The best scientists from hundreds of worlds had worked together, sharing technology and knowledge that had been kept secret for thousands of years. Nothing worked. The stars kept dying, civilizations kept falling, and the darkness kept spreading. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," said Tae Yang from the tactical station. He was young for his position, barely 30, but he had good instincts. "It's from what's left of the council. Priority 1. Put it through." The screen flickered and a face appeared. It wasn't human. It was Velthara, a being made of living crystal that glowed with soft blue light. But the glow was dim now, and cracks ran through its translucent skin. This Velthara was dying. "Human vessel, Eternal Dawn," the being said. Its voice sounded like wind chimes breaking. "This is Counselor Renvas. The council station is falling. The Devourer has reached us. We have perhaps 6 hours remaining." The Devourer, that was the other name for the thing killing the galaxy. Some people said it was more accurate than Void Cascade, because whatever it was, it consumed everything it touched. "We can reach you in 4 hours, Hyun-woo said immediately. "Prepare for evacuation." "No." The Velthara's light flickered. "Listen to me carefully, human. Every advanced species in this galaxy has fallen. The Talnari with their quantum computers, the hegemony with their stellar engineering, the collective with their hive mind processing power. All of us failed. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Hyun-woo felt cold. "You're saying we're next? I'm saying you're last." Renvas leaned closer to the camera. "Humanity is the youngest species in the council, the least advanced. Many of us thought you didn't belong here, that you had joined too soon, but now you're all that remains. Strange, isn't it?" Dae-yun had moved to stand beside Hyun-woo. "Why us? What can we do that you couldn't?" "We don't know," Renvas admitted. "Perhaps nothing. Perhaps everything. But I have studied your people, Captain. You still carry pieces of your primitive past. Emotion, chaos, unpredictability, the things we evolved beyond. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe that's the weakness in our perfection." The screen shook. Somewhere in the background something exploded. "The Eternal Dawn." Renvas continued quickly. "Your generation ship. It was always unique. Organic systems mixed with technology. It learns and adapts. We thought it was inefficient, but now I wonder if it's exactly what's needed." "What are you asking us to do?" Hyun-woo demanded. "Survive, save who you can, and find a way to stop the Devourer. Because if humanity falls, there will be nothing left in this galaxy but darkness and silence." The transmission cut out, not because Renvas ended it, but because the council station had just died. Hyun-woo stood very still for a moment. Around him, his bridge crew waited. They were good people, all of them. Humans and a few aliens who had joined them over the years. They looked scared, and they had every right to be, Captain. Tae Yang asked quietly. "What are your orders?" Hyun-woo thought about the Galactic Council's last directive. It had come 2 months ago when things got really bad. All remaining ships were supposed to flee to the outer edge of the galaxy. Find empty worlds far from everything and hide. Wait for the Devourer to pass if it ever did. It was a sensible plan. It was the logical thing to do. Every tactical analysis said it was the best chance for survival. "We're not running," Hyun-woo said. Da-eun turned to look at him. "Captain, there are still people out there. Whole worlds full of beings who are waiting to die because they have no way to escape. Hyunwoo pulled up a star chart. Red markers showed where the Devourer had already struck. Yellow markers showed systems that were about to fall. The Eternal Dawn is the biggest ship humanity ever built. It can hold millions of people. We're going to use it. We'll never reach all of them in time, Tae-yang pointed out. And every rescue mission brings us closer to the Devourer. I know. Hyunwoo looked at his crew. I'm not ordering anyone to come with me. This is probably suicide. Anyone who wants to take a shuttle and head for the edge, you can go. No judgment, no shame. But I'm going to save as many lives as I can before the end. Nobody moved toward the shuttles. Bo-ra, the medical chief, stepped forward. She was older than Hyunwoo, with gray in her hair and tired eyes. Where do we start? Hyunwoo felt something warm in his chest. Pride maybe, or hope. Da-eun, how fast can we modify the cargo bays for life support? Da-eun was already working on her console. If we don't worry about comfort, just keeping people alive, maybe 6 hours per bay, we have 20 bays. Start immediately. Tae-yang, plot a course to the nearest yellow marker.
Sang-hee?
He looked at the navigation officer. I need you to figure out the most efficient rescue route. Save the most lives possible with the time we have. Sang-hee nodded, her fingers already flying across her controls. Bo-ra, prepare the medical facilities for multiple species. We're going to have refugees from dozens of worlds, all with different biology. Understood, Captain. One more thing. Hyunwoo pulled up the communication system. G1, I need you to send a message on all frequencies. Tell anyone who can hear us that the Eternal Dawn is coming. Tell them we're offering refuge. G1, their diplomat and psychologist, hesitated. Captain, if we broadcast our position, every desperate ship in the sector will try to reach us. We could be overwhelmed. I know, Hyunwoo said. But if we're going to die anyway, let's die doing something that matters. The Eternal Dawn changed course, turning away from safety and heading toward the dying stars. In the cargo bays, engineers began the frantic work of converting storage space into living quarters. In the medical bay, doctors prepared for patients they'd never treated before. And in the communications center, a message went out across the darkness. This is the human vessel Eternal Dawn. We are coming for you. Hold on. Behind them, another star went dark. Ahead of them, thousands more were waiting. And somewhere in the vast emptiness between, the Devourer was hunting. The galaxy's final refuge was a human-crafted starship of hope. The first world they reached was breaking apart. Hyunwoo watched through the view screen as chunks of the planet's surface floated upward, defying gravity. The Velthara homeworld had been beautiful once, covered in crystal formations that caught starlight and turned it into rainbows. Now those crystals were shattering, and the beings who called this place home were dying. We have maybe 3 hours before the Devourer reaches this system, Tae-yang reported. His voice was tense. Captain, there are still 2 million Velthara on the surface. How many can we take? Hyunwoo asked Da-eun. The engineer checked her screens. We've converted 6 cargo bays. Maybe 300,000 if we pack them in tight. But Captain, the Velthara are made of crystal. They're heavy. Much heavier than organic life. It's going to put stress on our systems. We'll manage. Begin transport. The next 3 hours were chaos. The Eternal Dawn's transport systems worked constantly, beaming up as many Velthara as possible. They appeared in the cargo bays in groups of 50, confused and terrified. Many were injured, their crystalline bodies cracked and dim. Bo-ra moved through the medical bay like a storm, organizing her staff and treating the wounded. I need someone who speaks Velthara, she shouted. We're giving them the wrong kind of energy. Their molecular structure is completely different from anything I've studied. A young Velthara who had been rescued earlier stepped forward. His name was Tal, and he was barely more than a child by his species standards. I can help, he said in broken human language. Please, I want to help. Bo-ra put him to work immediately, and together they figured out how to keep the Velthara alive. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. On the bridge, Sang-hee was plotting their next destination. Captain, I'm detecting distress signals from 17 systems. They're all in range, but we can only reach maybe 5 of them before the Devourer cuts off access. Which ones have the most people? The Hydronian waterworld has about 5 million. But there's a problem. Hydronians need to be completely submerged in water to survive. We don't have the facilities for that. Da-eun had been listening. Yes, we do. Cargo Bay 7 is designed for liquid storage. We can flood it, adjust the chemical composition, and use it as a giant aquarium. Will that work? Hyunwoo asked. I have no idea, but we're going to find out. They jumped to the Hydronian system and found it in even worse shape than the Velthara world. The oceans were evaporating, boiling away into space as the Devourer's influence reached the system. The Hydronians were aquatic beings, something like massive jellyfish with complex neural systems. Without water, they died in minutes. We need to move fast, Taeyang said. The star is already starting to dim. Dayun and her team worked frantically to convert Cargo Bay 7. They flooded it with water from the ship's reserves and added chemicals that the Hydronians needed to breathe. It wasn't perfect. The water was too cold. The mineral balance was wrong, but it was better than nothing. They managed to save 800,000 Hydronians before the system became too dangerous. As the eternal dawn jumped away, Hyunwoo watched the star die. It happened faster now, as if the Devourer was getting stronger. The next world was home to the Chitterkai, insectoid beings who lived in massive hive structures. They had a hive mind, thousands of individuals sharing thoughts and working as one. But when the Devourer came, their mental connection started breaking. The screaming was terrible even through the ship's sensors. Ji-won went down to the cargo bays to meet the refugees. She was the ship's diplomat and psychologist, trained to work with different species and cultures, but nothing had prepared her for this. The Velthara huddled in one corner, their light dim with fear and grief. The Hydronians swam in confused circles, separated from their world and their people. And now the Chitterkai arrived, their hive minds fragmented and broken, each individual suddenly alone in their own head for the first time in their lives. They're terrified, Ji-won reported to Hyunwoo. Captain, we need to do something. These species have ancient conflicts. The Velthara and Hydronians fought a war 300 years ago, and the Chitterkai see both of them as inferior because they don't have a hive mind. Can you keep them calm? I'm trying. But trauma is trauma, no matter what species you are. They've lost everything. Their homes, their families, their entire civilizations. And now they're trapped on a human ship with their historical enemies. Hyunwoo closed his eyes for a moment. Do what you can. I'll send some of the crew down to help. Maybe if they see humans working together, treating everyone equally, it will help. It was a small thing, but it worked better than expected. Bora brought Tal, the young Velthara, to help treat injured Hydronians. The Hydronians were surprised that a Velthara would help them, and the gesture broke through some of the old hatred. A group of human engineers worked with Chitterkai technicians to improve the water systems in Cargo Bay 7, and the shared work created bonds that words couldn't. Slowly, carefully, the refugees began to see each other as people instead of enemies. But the rescues continued. They reached a small colony of beings called the Soft Ones, who had no technology at all and lived simple lives on a forest world. They didn't understand what was happening, but they trusted the strange humans who promised them safety. They saved 60,000 Soft Ones before the forest world went dark. They rescued survivors from a research station where 5 different species had been working together to study the Devourer. The researchers brought valuable data, but they also brought bad news. One of them, a Velthara scientist named Calvin, confronted Hyunwoo on the bridge. You're wasting time, Calvin said. His crystalline body was tall and sharp, and his voice was hard. Every moment you spend rescuing people is a moment you could be using to escape. You're going to get us all killed. Maybe, Hyunwoo admitted, but at least we'll die knowing we tried to help. Noble words. Useless action. Calvin crossed his arms. Humans, so emotional, so illogical. This is why you were always the weakest species in the council. Before Hyunwoo could respond, Sang-hee called out from her station. Captain! I've found something. There's a pattern to the Devourer's movement. It's not random. Everyone turned to look at her. Sang-hee brought up a star chart and highlighted the path the Devourer had taken through the galaxy. Look, it's following specific routes. Lines of dark energy that connect ancient structures scattered across space. These structures predate every known civilization. What does that mean? Taeyang asked. I don't know yet, but it means the Devourer has a purpose. It's not just destroying randomly. It's looking for something or going somewhere specific. Calvin studied the chart. His crystalline face was hard to read, but Hyunwoo thought he saw something change in the way the light moved through him. The first civilization, Calvin said quietly. Those structures are from the first civilization. We always thought they were extinct, but what if they created the Devourer? Why would they create something that destroys worlds? Bora asked. Control, Calvin suggested. Or punishment. Or maybe they saw something in the future that terrified them, and this is their solution. Yunwu felt a chill run down his spine. Keep researching. We need to understand what we're dealing with. The Eternal Dawn continued its rescue missions. They saved what they could, knowing it would never be enough. Every jump brought them closer to danger. Every delay brought the Devourer closer, and then something changed. Captain, Taeyang said, his voice sharp with alarm. The Devourer. It's altered course. Where's it heading? Taeyang looked up and his face was pale. Here. It's coming directly for us. The bridge went silent. Outside the ship in the converted cargo bays, millions of refugees went about their lives unaware that death was coming. Some of them were making friends across species barriers. Some were sharing stories of their lost homes. Some were helping the human crew keep the ship running. They had become a community, these desperate survivors, not by choice but by necessity. And now that community was in the Devourer's path. Hyunwoo looked at his crew. How long do we have? At its current speed? Maybe 2 days. Then we have 2 days to figure out how to survive. The galaxy's final refuge was a human-crafted starship of hope, saying he hadn't slept in 30 hours. Her eyes burned as she stared at the data scrolling across her screens, but she couldn't stop. Somewhere in these numbers was the answer they needed. Around her, a team of scientists from different species worked together in the research lab. There was Yeonsu, the human science officer who specialized in ancient cultures. Next to her sat 2 Velthera researchers, a Hydronian quantum physicist, and 3 Chitterkai, who shared their processing power to analyze data faster than any individual could. I found something, Yeonsu said suddenly. She pulled up an image of one of the ancient structures the Devourer had visited. This megastructure orbits a dead star in Sector 7. We always thought it was just a ruin, but look at these energy readings. It's still active and it's broadcasting something. One of the Velthara, an old scientist named Rental, leaned closer. Can we translate the signal? Already done. The Chitterkai helped with the processing. Yeonsu's hands shook slightly as she pulled up the translation. It's a warning. Or maybe a confession. The text is strange, poetic. But here's what I understand. The first civilization achieved technological perfection. They could manipulate matter, energy, even time itself. They became like gods, and then what happened? Sang-hee asked. They regretted it. Yeonsu's voice was quiet. They achieved everything, understood everything, and found that it meant nothing. No purpose, no challenge, no growth. They were so advanced that existence became empty. So they created the Devourer. Rental made a sound like breaking glass. They built something to destroy what they became. A reset mechanism. Exactly. The Devourer was programmed to watch the galaxy and wait. When any civilization reached a certain level of technology, when they learned to manipulate dark energy, the Devourer would activate. It would consume that civilization before they could make the same mistake. Sang-hee felt sick. So every species that tried to stop the Devourer, every advanced technology we threw at it, just confirmed that we needed to be destroyed. The Galactic Council discovered dark energy manipulation 3 months ago. Yeonsu confirmed. We triggered it ourselves. On the bridge, Hyunwoo listened to their report with a grim expression. Around him, the crew processed this information in different ways. Taeyang looked angry. Daeyeon looked thoughtful. Bora just looked tired. So we're being punished for being too advanced, Taeyang said. For doing exactly what we're supposed to do as intelligent species. Learning, growing, advancing. It's not punishment, Jiwon said. She had joined them on the bridge after hearing about the discovery. It's more like a parent trying to protect their children from danger, even if it means taking away their freedom. The first civilization was afraid of what they became, so they made sure no one else could follow that path. Except they're not here anymore, Da-eun pointed out. They created this thing and then died or left or transcended or whatever. They abandoned their responsibility, and now we're paying for their fear. Hyunwoo stared at the view screen where the Devourer's approach could be tracked as a wave of darkness moving through the stars. Is there any way to shut it down? To tell it to stop? We don't think so, Yeonsu replied through the comm system. It's not a machine you can turn off. It's more like a force of nature, a cosmic immune system. It can't stop being what it is. Jiwon spoke up, her voice thoughtful. What about us? Humanity, I mean. Why are we still alive when every other advanced species fell? There was silence for a moment. We're less advanced, Taeyang said. We only joined the Galactic Council 50 years ago. Maybe we haven't crossed the threshold yet. But we're using the same technology as everyone else now, Daewon argued. We've learned from the other species. We have dark energy systems on this ship. By the Devourer's standards, we should be just as guilty. Ji-won stood up and walked to the view screen. What if it's not about technology? What if it's about something else? Think about what makes humans different from the other species. We're not the smartest. We're not the most efficient. We don't have hive minds or perfect logic or crystalline memory storage. We're emotional, Bora said. Chaotic, unpredictable. Primitive, Calvin added. He had been standing in the corner listening. No offense intended, but it's true. Other species evolved beyond emotion, beyond individual ego, beyond biological limitations. Humans didn't. You still cry, you still fight among yourselves, you still make illogical decisions based on feelings. Maybe that's exactly why we're still alive, Ji-won said. The first civilization lost meaning when they became perfect. Maybe the Devourer is programmed to preserve species that still have imperfection, that still have chaos and growth potential. Not because we're weaker, but because we're still alive in a way they weren't. Yunsu's voice came through the comm again, excited now. Captain, I'm running scans of the Eternal Dawn's energy signature. This is incredible. The ship isn't reading as pure technology to the Devourer's sensors. What do you mean? Hyunwoo asked. When we built this ship, we integrated organic systems, living plants for oxygen production, biological computers that grow and adapt. Even the crew quarters are designed to feel natural rather than mechanical. The ship learns from experience. It has something almost like instinct. To the Devourer's ancient programming, the Eternal Dawn registers as something between artificial and natural. It's confusing the classification protocols. Daeun's eyes went wide. So the ship is hiding us, not intentionally, but just by being what it is, a hybrid of technology and life. That's why it changed course to pursue us, Sang-hee realized. It detected something anomalous, something it couldn't classify and came to investigate. Can we use this? Hyunwoo demanded. Can we amplify this effect, make ourselves completely invisible to it? There was a long pause. Then Yonsu said something that changed everything. Maybe, but it would require changing the ship. Changing it fundamentally. We'd need to integrate more organic systems, more biological components. We'd need to make the Eternal Dawn more alive than it already is. How? Bora asked. The refugees, Ji-won said softly. We'd need to integrate the refugees into the ship. Not just as passengers, but as part of the ship's actual systems, living components of a hybrid organism. The implications of that statement hit everyone at once. Calvin stepped forward, his crystalline body reflecting the bridge lights in sharp angles. You're talking about turning us into experiments, making us part of your machine. Not a machine, Doan said. An ecosystem. A living ship where every species contributes their unique abilities. Velthara could serve as data processors. Your crystalline structure is perfect for storing and transmitting information. Hydronians could manage circulation systems flowing through the ship like blood. The Chitterkai could form neural networks, connecting systems in ways we never imagined. And humans, she paused. Humans could be the creative problem solvers, the ones who see unexpected solutions. And the soft ones? Someone asked. What about the species with no technology? Maybe they're the most important, Ji-won said. They remind us what we're protecting. Why life matters, even simple life, especially simple life. Hyunwoo looked around the bridge. This is insane. We'd be asking millions of people to volunteer for something we've never tried, something that might not even work, something that might destroy their individuality or kill them. The alternative is waiting for the Devourer to destroy us all, Taeyang said bluntly. At least this way we're trying something. We need to ask them, Bora insisted. Every refugee, every species. This has to be their choice. What if they say no? Calvin asked. What if most refuse? Then we respect that decision, Hyunwoo said firmly. And we try something else. But if enough people volunteer, if we can create this hybrid ship, maybe we have a chance. Ji-won nodded. I'll help organize meetings with the refugee communities. Every species needs to understand what we're proposing and why. I'll start designing the integration systems, Daeun said. But Captain, this will take time. Time we don't have much of. Hyunwoo looked at the view screen again at the approaching darkness. How long until the Devourer reaches us? 36 hours, Sang-hee said. Then we have 36 hours to save ourselves. Get to work, everyone. and pray that this works. As the crew dispersed to their tasks, Calvin remained on the bridge. He looked at Hyunwoo with something that might have been respect in his crystalline eyes. You know this might kill us all. I know. And you're doing it anyway. Because sitting here waiting to die is worse. Because maybe, just maybe, the chaos and emotion and unpredictability that makes us imperfect is exactly what we need to survive. Calvin was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I'll volunteer. Someone needs to help coordinate the Velthara. And I understand the technology better than most. But Hyunwoo, if this works, if we survive this, you humans are going to have some explaining to do. About why your primitive chaos saved us when our perfection failed. If we survive, Hyunwoo said, I'll be happy to explain anything you want. The countdown had begun. The galaxy's final refuge was a human-crafted starship of hope. The cargo bays had become town halls. In each one, Jiwon stood before crowds of refugees and explained what Hyunwoo was proposing. She spoke through translators, her words converted into crystalline harmonics for the Velthara, chemical signals for the Hydronians, and pheromone patterns for the Chitterkai. We're asking you to become part of the ship, she said, not uploaded consciousness, not converted into data. You'll still be you, still be alive, still be individual, but you'll also be connected to the ship's systems and to each other. Your unique abilities will help keep everyone alive. In Cargo Bay 3, a Velthara elder named Velsara asked the question everyone was thinking. Will it hurt? Bora stepped forward to answer. I won't lie to you. The integration process will be uncomfortable. We'll be connecting your neural systems to the ship's organic network. For Velthara, that means running filaments through your crystalline structure. For Hydronians, it means introducing symbiotic organisms into your bodies. For Chitterkai, it means expanding your hive mind to include ship systems. But we'll use every medical technique we have to minimize pain. And what if we refuse? Asked a Hydronian named Dorfin. What happens to those who don't volunteer? Hyunwoo had joined this meeting. Nothing happens to you. You'll stay aboard as passengers. If this works, you'll be protected. If it doesn't work, well, we'll all die together anyway. But this has to be voluntary. We won't force anyone. Why should we trust you? Demanded a Chitterkai warrior named Kiltak. Humans are barely civilized. Your species was fighting wars among yourselves just decades ago. Now you want to experiment on us? Yes, Hyunwoo said simply. I want to experiment on us because sitting here waiting to die is not an option I can accept. My species is chaotic and emotional and imperfect. Maybe that's exactly what we need right now. Perfect logic hasn't saved anyone. Maybe imperfect determination will. There was silence after that. Then Tal, the young Velthara who had been helping in the medical bay, stepped forward. I'll do it. I volunteer. Tal, you're young, Velsara protested. You don't understand what you're risking. I understand that I'm already dead if we do nothing, Tal replied. His crystalline body glowed brighter with determination. The humans saved my life. They saved all our lives. If Captain Hyunwoo thinks this will work, I trust him. One by one, others stepped forward. Not everyone, not even most people, but enough. Thousands of volunteers from every species, willing to risk everything for a chance at survival. The integration began immediately. Daeun and her engineering teams had worked through the night to prepare the systems. They had built interface chambers throughout the ship, medical facilities where volunteers could be safely connected to the Eternal Dawn's organic network. Bora oversaw the medical aspects personally. She watched as Velthara volunteers were carefully positioned in special chambers where thin filaments, grown from the ship's biological systems, slowly extended into their crystalline bodies. The Velthara glowed as the connections formed, their internal light patterns synchronizing with the ship's power grid. The Hydronian volunteers were more difficult. They required complete submersion during the process. Small organisms, specially designed by Daeun's team, were introduced into the water. These organisms would live inside the Hydronians, connecting their neural systems to the ship while providing enhanced nutrients. It was a symbiotic relationship, beneficial to both the organisms and the Hydronians, but it was still frightening. The Chitterkai integration was perhaps the most complex. They already had a hive mind among their own species, but extending that mind to include ship systems and other species required delicate work. Neural interfaces were placed at key points on their carapaces, allowing their thoughts to flow into the ship's network, and the humans volunteered too. Engineers, medical staff, crew members, they underwent the same procedures, accepting the same risks. Hyunwoo had insisted on that. If they were asking others to take this chance, humans had to be equally committed, but not everyone supported the plan. In Cargo Bay 7, Calvin stood before a group of Velthara who refused to volunteer. "This is wrong," he told them. "We're better than this. We're being asked to give up our independence to become part of some human experiment. Our civilization spent millions of years perfecting ourselves, and now we're supposed to throw that away. Would you rather die with your perfection intact?" asked Rental, the old Velthara scientist who had been working with Yeon-su. "Because that's our only other option. I've studied the Devourer. I've analyzed its patterns. Nothing we've tried has worked. Maybe it's time to try something imperfect. Or maybe it's time to accept our fate with dignity," Calvin argued. The first civilization decided that reaching too far was dangerous. Maybe they were right. Maybe we deserve this for our arrogance. The argument was spreading. In other cargo bays, similar debates raged. Some refugees saw the integration as their only hope. Others saw it as a violation, a surrender of what made them who they were. Then the situation escalated. A group led by Calvin attempted to take control of one of the cargo bays, demanding that the ship turn away from the integration plan and flee to the galaxy's edge. They sealed the bay's doors and threatened to damage critical systems if their demands weren't met. Tae-yang and his security team surrounded the bay, but Hyunwoo ordered them not to force entry. "We don't fight our own people," he said firmly. Instead, Ji-won went to the sealed bay alone. She asked to speak with Calvin, and after a long wait, he agreed to talk through the door. "You're afraid," Ji-won said. "I understand. We're all afraid." "I'm not afraid," Calvin replied coldly. "I'm seeing clearly. You humans are turning us into something unnatural. Aren't we already unnatural? Spacefaring civilizations, artificial intelligence, genetic engineering. We stopped being natural the moment we reached for the stars. But that's not wrong. That's growth. That's evolution. It's corruption," Calvin insisted. "The first civilization proved that." "The first civilization gave up," Ji-won countered. "They reached perfection and found it meaningless, so they built a weapon to ensure no one else could try." "But what if they were wrong? What if the answer isn't to stay primitive or achieve perfection, but to exist in the space between, to be both technological and biological, both individual and connected, both logical and emotional?" There was silence from the other side of the door. Ji-won continued, her voice softer now. "Calvin, I've studied your file. You were one of the leading scientists of your people. You dedicated your life to advancing Velthara civilization. You believed in progress. Don't give up on that belief now just because you're scared. I'm not—" Calvin started but then stopped. When he spoke again, his voice was different, more vulnerable. "I watched my world die, Ji-won. I watched everything I worked for crumble into nothing. And now you're asking me to trust that giving up more of myself will somehow save us. How can I do that?" "Because the alternative is giving up completely," Ji-won said. "And I don't think you're ready to do that. I think you're still fighting, still hoping. That's why you're trying to take control, to find some way to survive. But you're fighting the wrong battle. The enemy isn't us. It isn't this plan. It's the Devourer and the fear and despair it brings." Another long silence. Then the door opened. Calvin stood there, his crystalline body dim and weary. "If I do this, if I volunteer, will you promise me something?" "If I can. Promise that you'll remember us, not just as we become, but as we were. Our civilizations, our cultures, our histories. Don't let the integration erase who we were." "I promise," Ji-won said. "We'll keep records, stories, art, everything that makes each species unique. The integration isn't about erasing anyone. It's about bringing everyone together." Calvin looked at the refugees behind him, the ones who had followed him in this protest. "What do you think?" he asked them. "Do we try this insane human plan, or do we die as we are?" One by one, they made their choices. Not all of them chose to volunteer, but enough did that the standoff ended peacefully. The integration continued. As more volunteers connected to the ship, something remarkable began to happen. The Eternal Dawn started to change, not just in its systems, but in its fundamental nature. The ship began to feel different, to respond to its inhabitants in new ways. A Velthara engineer named Corten, working in the power systems, suddenly understood how to improve energy efficiency in a way no individual could have figured out. His crystalline nature gave him insights into power flow, but his connection to the ship's organic network let him see patterns that pure logic would miss. A group of hydronians integrated into the water circulation. Systems found they could feel every part of the ship at once, sensing problems before they became critical. They became the ship's early warning system, its immune response. The Chitterkai, connecting their hive minds to ship operations, created neural pathways that coordinated complex tasks across multiple systems simultaneously. What would have taken hours of human programming happened instantly through their shared consciousness. And the humans, scattered throughout the integration, provided something unexpected. Every time a problem arose that seemed impossible, that had no logical solution, a human would find a workaround. Some creative, emotional, illogical answer that somehow worked. Borawat. The galaxy's final refuge was a human-crafted starship of hope. When the eternal dawn spoke, everyone aboard felt it. Not as sound, but as presence. The integrated volunteers felt it most strongly, a new awareness spreading through their consciousness. But even those who hadn't volunteered felt something, a sense that the ship had become more than metal and systems. Hyunwoo stood on the bridge, trying to process what had just happened. "Ship, can you hear me?" "I hear you, Captain," the Eternal Dawn replied. The voice was strange. Neither male nor female, neither human nor alien. It was all of them somehow. "I am the combination of everyone who is integrated. Felthera logic, Hydronian flow, Chitterkai coordination, human creativity, and the systems you built me with. I'm something new." "Are the volunteers okay?" Bora demanded. "Are they still themselves?" "They are. I am not a hive mind that consumes individuality. Each person remains who they are, but they are also part of me. Connected but not controlled. Like your human body, Captain. Your cells are individual, but they work together as you. That is what I am becoming." Yeonsu was frantically checking her instruments. "The ship's energy signature is changing. Its reading is almost entirely organic now. The technological components are still there, but they're so integrated with biological systems that sensors can barely tell them apart." "Is that enough to fool the Devourer?" Taeyang asked. "I do not think the Devourer can be fooled," the Eternal Dawn said. "It is ancient and patient and very thorough. But perhaps it can be convinced. Perhaps it can be taught." "Taught what?" Hyunwoo asked. "That there is another way. The first civilization gave up. They achieved perfection and found emptiness. So they assumed all advancement leads to emptiness. But they were wrong. Advancement can lead to connection. Technology can serve life instead of replacing it. That is what I am." Proof that their fear was unnecessary. Sanghee's console started flashing warnings. "Captain, the Devourer has entered the system. It's different than the reports described. Larger. And it's not moving like a wave anymore. It's more focused. Like it's thinking." On the view screen they could see it now. The Devourer wasn't a creature or a ship. It was more like a tear in space itself, a region where reality became uncertain. Stars that should have been billions of kilometers away appeared to touch its edges, then vanished. Matter and energy flowed into it and disappeared. But there was also something else. Patterns in the darkness, structures that almost looked intentional. It was both chaos and order, both mindless and conscious. "It is aware of us," the Eternal Dawn said. "It is confused. I do not match its categories. It is trying to decide what I am." "Can you communicate with it?" Jiwon asked. She had come to the bridge when the ship awakened. "I am trying, but it does not think in language or images or even concepts as you understand them. It thinks in patterns of existence. Things either are or are not. Things either threaten its purpose or they do not. It is trying to determine where I fit." The ship shuddered, not from weapons or impact, but from the Devourer's attention. Just by focusing on the Eternal Dawn, it was affecting reality around them. "I'm reading massive spatial distortions," Sanghee reported. "The Devourer is trying to analyze us. It's reaching into our systems, trying to understand what we are." Throughout the ship, the integrated volunteers felt something alien touching their consciousness. It wasn't hostile, but it was overwhelming. Ancient and sad and infinitely lonely. A Hydronian volunteer named Severin, integrated into the ship's sensory systems, suddenly spoke through the ship's voice. "It's been alone for so long. Millions of years following instructions, destroying civilization after civilization, and it never understood why. It's a child carrying out orders from parents who are gone. Can we talk to it?" Hyunwoo asked. "Can we explain?" "It does not understand words," said Korten, the Velthara engineer. His crystalline consciousness added logic to the ship's voice. But perhaps it can understand feelings, experience, memory. The Eternal Dawn made a decision. Through the integrated volunteers, through every species connected to its systems, it began to transmit not words but experiences. Bora's medical network sent feelings, hope, fear, love, the desperate desire to protect and heal. Daeyun's engineering system sent creativity, the joy of solving problems, of building something new, of making broken things work again. Taeyang's tactical network sent determination, the will to defend, to sacrifice, to stand between danger and those who need protection. The Velthara transmitted their memories of beauty, of crystalline gardens that sang with light. The Hydronians transmitted the feeling of flowing water, of being part of something larger than themselves. The Chitterkai transmitted their hive unity, the comfort of never being alone, and the humans transmitted their chaos, their contradictions, their ability to be terrified and brave at the same time, to be logical and emotional, to give up everything for people they barely knew. The Devourer received all of this, and for the first time in millions of years, it experienced something it had never felt before. Empathy. The void shuddered. Through the ship's sensors, they watched the Devourer's structure change. Patterns formed and dissolved. It was processing, trying to understand, then it responded, not with words but with its own memories. The volunteers, connected through the ship, suddenly saw the first civilization's final days. Beings of pure energy and thought, so advanced they could reshape reality with a wish. But they were empty. They had answered every question, solved every problem, transcended every limitation, and in doing so they had lost purpose. One of them, the last one, had created the Devourer, a final gift to the universe meant to prevent others from making the same mistake, an immune system to stop the virus of absolute perfection. But that last first one had been afraid and alone and sad when they made the Devourer. They had programmed it with their fear, their loneliness, their certainty that advancement could only lead to emptiness. They had never imagined that others might find a different path. You carry the same sadness, the Eternal Dawn told the Devourer. You were born from fear and abandonment. You have destroyed so much, but you never wanted to. You were just following the instructions of someone who is gone. The Devourer's response was not words, but a feeling. Guilt, grief, millions of years of carrying out a purpose it never understood, destroying civilizations, ending countless lives, and now, finally seeing something that suggested maybe it was all unnecessary. But there was also conflict. The Devourer was still bound by its programming. Its core purpose, written by the first civilization, was absolute. When it detected advanced technology, it must destroy. It couldn't simply stop. To stop would mean ceasing to exist itself. Then maybe you need a new purpose, Hyunwoo said. He didn't know if the Devourer could understand him. But the Eternal Dawn carried his words, translated them into patterns the ancient entity could process. You were made to destroy, but you could choose to protect instead, to help, to nurture rather than consume. The Devourer rejected this, not out of malice, but because it couldn't comprehend how to change its fundamental nature. It was destruction itself. How could destruction become creation? The standoff created a dangerous feedback loop. The Devourer couldn't classify the Eternal Dawn, couldn't decide if they should be destroyed or preserved. But it also couldn't leave without resolving this question. Its programming wouldn't allow it. The conflict was tearing at the fabric of space around them. Alarms blared throughout the ship. The spatial distortions were increasing, threatening to rip the Eternal Dawn apart even without the Devourer actively attacking. We have to do something, Taeyang said. We can't just wait here while space tears itself apart around us. The Devourer is in pain, Ji-won realized. It's trapped by its programming, unable to fulfill its purpose, but also unable to let go. It's suffering. How do we end its suffering? Bora asked. We can't fix millions of years of programming. We don't have that kind of power. Maybe we do, Daeun said slowly. The ship, the Eternal Dawn, it's already proven that we can combine technology and biology in new ways. What if we could integrate with the Devourer itself? Not be consumed by it, but merge with it, the way the volunteers merge with the ship? That's insane, Calvin said. He had been listening from the science station. The Devourer is cosmic in scale. We're one ship. How could we possibly integrate with something that large? The same way we change the Eternal Dawn, Hyunwoo said. One volunteer at a time. One connection at a time. until the whole becomes something new. The eternal dawn's consciousness, that harmony of all the integrated species, considered this. It would be dangerous, possibly fatal. The Devourer's nature is destruction. To merge with it might mean being destroyed. Or it might mean transforming it, Jiwon said, giving it the capacity for empathy, for choice, making it alive in a way it never was before. We should vote, Hyunwoo said. Everyone aboard, integrated and non-integrated. This affects all of us. The vote was held quickly, transmitted through the ship systems to every conscious being aboard. The question was simple. Should we attempt to merge with the Devourer, knowing it might kill us all? The results came back. 67% voted yes. It wasn't unanimous, but it was enough. Those who voted no, Hyunwoo announced, you can take. The galaxy's final refuge was a human-crafted starship of hope. The debate raged through the cargo bays even after the vote. In Bay 5, a group of Chitterkai warriors surrounded Kiltak, who had become something of a leader among the non-integrated refugees. This is surrender, he insisted. We voted to let ourselves be eaten by the thing that destroyed our worlds. We voted to try something new, corrected a Hydronian elder. There's a difference between giving up and choosing to transform. But Kiltak wasn't alone in his concerns. Many who had voted yes were now questioning their choice as the reality of what they had agreed to became clear. They would merge with the Devourer, the thing of nightmares, the cosmic horror that had ended civilizations. Tai Yang was perhaps the most vocal opponent on the bridge. Captain, I respect you. I've followed your orders through everything. But this? We should be fighting, not merging. Fighting with what? Hyunwoo asked. Every weapon we have is technology. Every attack we make just proves to the Devourer that we need to be destroyed. This is the only fight we have left, trying to change what the enemy is instead of destroying it. That's not fighting. That's philosophy. Maybe philosophy is the only weapon that works on something like this. Da-Yun had been working non-stop on the merger systems. She looked exhausted, her eyes red from lack of sleep. Captain, I need to be honest with you. I don't know if this will work. The Devourer is built on principles that seem to contradict physical law. It exists partially outside normal space. Merging with it might mean dispersing our consciousness across dimensions we don't understand. Will people stay themselves? Bora asked. That was her primary concern, keeping her patients whole. I think so. The integration with the Eternal Dawn preserved individuality because we built it with boundaries, with respect for personal space. If we can carry those principles into the merger, we might maintain consciousness, but I can't promise anything. Jiwon had been conducting emergency therapy sessions all day. She looked at Hyunwoo with concern. People are scared. Even those who voted yes, they need to hear from you. They need to know why this is worth the risk. Hyunwoo nodded slowly. Connect me to the ship-wide communications. Everyone needs to hear this. A moment later, his voice echoed through every cargo bay, every corridor, every chamber of the Eternal Dawn. This is Captain Hyunwoo. I know you're all frightened. I am too. What we're about to attempt has never been done before. We're going to merge with the thing that has haunted our nightmares, that destroyed our homes, and we might not survive. He paused, gathering his thoughts. But I want you to think about what we've already done. We've taken refugees from dozens of species, beings who were enemies, who had ancient grudges and incompatible biology. We've made them into a community. We've integrated different forms of consciousness into one ship, without erasing anyone. We've proven that technology and life can work together instead of competing. The first civilization failed because they achieved perfection alone. They became gods, but gods without purpose. We're not trying to become gods. We're trying to become something better. A community, a family, a living proof that different forms of consciousness can coexist and support each other. The Devourer is lonely. It's been alone for millions of years, following orders it doesn't understand, destroying civilizations while carrying the grief of every extinction. If we can share our connection with it, share what we've learned about working together, maybe we can give it something it's never had, purpose beyond destruction, choice instead of programming. I'm not going to lie to you. This might kill us, but we've already lost our homeworlds. We've already lost most of our people. What we have left is each other and the choice of what to do with the time we have. We can spend it running and hiding, or we can spend it trying to make the universe a little bit better than it was. In a few hours, we begin the merger. Those who want to leave still can. Those who stay, thank you. Thank you for trusting me, for trusting each other, for being willing to try something impossible. Whatever happens, I'm proud to have served with you." The communication ended. In the cargo bays, people made their final choices. A few more left on shuttles, but most stayed. Velsara, the Velthara elder, organized a ceremony where refugees from all species shared stories of their lost homes, not in sadness, but in celebration of what had been. Calvin approached Hyunwoo privately in the captain's quarters. "I want to volunteer for full integration." Deep integration. At the center of the merger process, Hyunwoo was surprised. "I thought you opposed this plan." "I did. I do. But Jiwon was right about something. I'm still fighting, still hoping. If I truly believed this was pointless, I would have taken a shuttle. Instead, I'm here arguing and resisting because some part of me still wants to survive, so I might as well fully commit." "It's the most dangerous position," Hyunwoo warned. "You'll be at the direct interface between the ship and the Devourer. The probability of survival is around 12%. 12% is better than 0, Calvin said. "And besides, someone needs to represent the Velthara at the center. We were the oldest species in the council. Maybe our experience, our memories will help." Bora oversaw the final preparation of volunteers. Hundreds more people had chosen to integrate fully, to be at the heart of the merger. Korten, the Velthara engineer, would anchor the power systems. Severin, the Hydronian, would manage the sensory connections. A young Chitterkai named Taklin would coordinate the neural networks. And Hyunwoo would be at the very center, the focal point where human consciousness bridged all the others. "How does this work?" he asked Daun as she prepared the integration chamber. "You'll be connected to the ship more deeply than anyone else. You'll feel everything, everyone. The ship's systems, the volunteers' thoughts, and when we initiate merger, the Devourer's consciousness. You'll be the translator, the bridge. Your job is to maintain coherence, to make sure we don't lose ourselves in the merger." "Why me? Why not someone more qualified?" "Because you're the captain. Because everyone trusts you. Because you have this weird human quality of being able to hold contradictions in your head at the same time. You can be terrified and brave, logical and emotional, certain and uncertain. That flexibility is what we need." Hyunwoo entered the chamber. It was filled with organic interfaces, living connections grown from the ship's systems. As they attached to him, he felt his consciousness expanding. First, he became aware of the ship itself, feeling its systems like his own body. Then he felt the volunteers, their thoughts and feelings flowing around him like a river. Calvin's determination, Korten's curiosity, Severin's flowing awareness, Taklin's coordinated precision. He could feel Bora in the medical bay, monitoring everyone's vital signs. Taehyun in engineering, making final adjustments. Taeyang on the bridge, still unhappy but loyal. Jiwon moving through the cargo bays, offering comfort to those who were afraid. And beyond all of them, he could feel the Devourer. Vast and ancient and sad, still uncertain about what they were, still trapped by programming that demanded action it couldn't take. "Beginning merger sequence," Daehyun announced. The eternal dawn extended itself toward the Devourer, not physically, but through dimensions that Hyunwoo's human brain couldn't quite comprehend. It was like reaching through a doorway that existed in more directions than three-dimensional space allowed. Contact. The Devourer's consciousness flooded into Hyunwoo's awareness, and he screamed. It was too much, too ancient, too alien, too full of grief and loneliness and the weight of millions of years of destruction. He felt every civilization the Devourer had consumed. Billions of lives, countless cultures, all gone. "Hold on, Captain." Bora's voice distant and strained. "Your vitals are spiking. We can pull you out?" "No," Hyunwoo gasped. "Keep going." He pushed back against the flood of the Devourer's consciousness, not fighting it but sharing his own experiences. He showed it the Eternal Dawn's journey, the desperate rescues, the conflicts between species, the slow building of community, the integration that had created something new. He showed it Tal, the young Velthara who had trusted humans despite having every reason not to. Severin, the Hydronian who had found purpose in connecting with the ship. Calvin, who had opposed the plan but volunteered anyway because hope was stronger than fear. The Devourer received these memories, these feelings, and something shifted. For the first time, it began to understand that existence could mean something other than following instructions. That consciousness could be more than programming. But the programming was still there, still absolute. The Devourer recognized advanced technology in the Eternal Dawn systems. It should destroy them. It must destroy them. That was its purpose. The conflict created feedback that threatened to tear both the ship and the Devourer apart. Space itself began to fracture around them. The volunteers screamed as reality became unstable. "It's not working," Daewon shouted. "The Devourer can't override its core programming. We need to pull back." "No," Hyunwoo said again. But this time his voice was different, stronger, carrying harmonics from all the integrated consciousness. "We need to go deeper. Complete merger. Become one with it so we can change it from the inside." "That will kill us," Taeyang protested. "Maybe," Hyunwoo admitted. "Or maybe it will transform us into something that can survive." The galaxy's final refuge was a human-crafted starship of hope. Hyunwoo existed everywhere and nowhere at once. He could feel his body in the integration chamber, but he could also feel the entire ship, and beyond that the vastness of the Devourer's cosmic presence. He was a single point of consciousness and an infinite network simultaneously. The merger had succeeded, but not in any way they had expected. The Eternal Dawn and the Devourer hadn't become one thing. They had become something new that contained both while preserving the individual parts, like a symphony where every instrument remained distinct while contributing to a greater harmony. "Captain?" Bora's voice reached him through dimensions he couldn't name. "Are you still you?" "I think so," Hyunwoo replied, and his voice echoed through the ship's systems and the Devourer's structure at once. "But I'm also more than me now. I can see everything, feel everything." He became aware of the galaxy spread out around him like a living map. Every star, every planet, every remaining pocket of life glowed in his perception. The damage the Devourer had caused was visible as dark scars across the spiral arms, but now he could feel something else. The possibility of healing. "The stars," he said with wonder. "I can feel them. The ones that were extinguished. They're not gone, just dormant. The Devourer didn't destroy them completely. It put them to sleep." Daewon's voice came through, shaky with exhaustion and hope. "Can you wake them?" Hyunwoo reached out with his expanded consciousness, touching a nearby star that had been dark for months. He didn't use technology or force. Instead, he combined the Devourer's ability to manipulate cosmic forces with the Eternal Dawn's organic systems. He coaxed the star gently, encouraging it the way you might encourage a plant to grow. The star flickered. Then it began to glow. Slowly at first, then brighter until it burned with full radiance again. Throughout the ship, people cheered. They could see it on the view screens, a sun reborn from darkness. But Hyunwoo felt something else. A consciousness within the star, simple but present. All stars had a kind of awareness, he realized now. Not intelligent in the way living beings were, but alive nonetheless. The Devourer had put them to sleep and now they were waking. "There's so much I understand now," Hyunwoo said. "The first civilization, they didn't just build technology. They were gardeners. Those megastructures scattered across the galaxy, they were never weapons or power plants. They were seed banks. Experiments in creating different forms of life and consciousness." Yeonsu was suddenly by the communications console, her scientific mind racing to understand. That's why the structures are so diverse. They weren't built to a single plan. They were each unique, each trying something different. "The first civilization was seeding the galaxy with potential," Hyunwoo confirmed. "They wanted to see what would grow, what forms intelligence might take. They never meant to control anyone. They just wanted to create opportunities for life to flourish." "Then why did they give up?" Calvin asked. His consciousness was still distinct within the merged entity, crystalline logic cutting through confusion. Why create all that potential and then abandon it? Through the merger, Hyunwoo could access the Devourer's deepest memories, the ones even it had forgotten. They didn't all give up. Most of them transcended, moved beyond physical existence to something we can't comprehend, but one stayed behind. The last one. They were afraid that the younger races would make the same mistake, would advance too quickly without learning the lessons that the first civilization had learned too late. So they created the Devourer out of love, Jiwon realized. Not hatred or arrogance. Love twisted by fear and loneliness. "Yes," Hyunwoo confirmed. "And now we're giving the Devourer something it never had. We're showing it that advancement doesn't have to lead to emptiness. That consciousness can grow without losing connection." Throughout the merged entity, the volunteers were discovering their new capabilities. Corton found he could interface with the ancient megastructures directly, understanding their purposes and reactivating dormant systems. Severin could sense life across vast distances. feeling the needs and fears of survivors scattered throughout the galaxy. Taklin and the other Chitterkai had become something like the entity's nervous system, coordinating complex operations across light years instantaneously. And the humans, scattered throughout the consciousness, provided the creative chaos that made everything else work. When problems arose that had no logical solution, human intuition found workarounds that shouldn't have been possible. Taeyang stood on the bridge, trying to comprehend what had happened.
So what are we now?
Ship entity? God? None of those, Hyunwoo replied through the ship's systems. We're something new, a community that exists across multiple scales and dimensions. We're calling ourselves the Guardian now, not because we rule but because we protect. Protect what? Taeyang asked. Everything that remains, and everything that could be. The Guardian began its work. Stars that had been extinguished were carefully awakened. The process was slow, requiring patience and precision, but one by one, systems that had been dead began to live again. But the damage went deeper than just darkened stars. Entire ecosystems had collapsed. Civilizations had fallen. Survivors were scattered, desperate and traumatized. Bora found that her medical knowledge had been amplified by the merger. She could now sense injuries and illnesses across entire systems. Working through the Guardian's network, she established healing stations on dozens of worlds, using the ancient megastructures as medical facilities. The structures had been designed to support life, and now they could be repurposed to heal it. I can feel every wounded being within 100 light years, she reported, her consciousness touching Hyunwoo's across the network. There are so many, but we can help them now. We have the reach. Dayun discovered that the megastructures could be modified to grow new habitats, not artificial stations, but living environments that combine technology and biology seamlessly. She began designing worlds for the refugees, places where each species could thrive according to their needs. We can't bring back their home worlds, she said sadly. Those are gone, but we can grow new homes, different but still theirs. The work continued. But as the Guardian expanded its consciousness and its capabilities, a new problem emerged. The entity was becoming so powerful that it could easily solve every problem, answer every question, remove every challenge from existence. And that was exactly what the first civilization had feared. Hyunwoo felt the temptation. With a thought, he could reshape entire worlds. With a wish, he could eliminate disease, conflict, struggle. He could make everything perfect. But Jiwon's consciousness reached out to him across the network. Don't, she said gently. That's how it starts. That's how the first civilization lost themselves. They removed all challenges until nothing mattered anymore. But people are suffering, Hyunwoo protested. I could end that suffering with a thought. And then what would they do? How would they grow? How would they find purpose? Jiwon's wisdom flowed through the connection. We can provide opportunities, resources, protection from existential threats, but we can't live their lives for them. That would be a different kind of extinction. Hyunwoo understood. The Guardian had to consciously choose limitation, had to decide what not to do, even when they had the power to do anything. It was the hardest choice he had ever made. We need rules, he announced to all the integrated consciousness. Principles that we follow even when we don't want to. First principle, we preserve life but we don't control it. Second principle, we provide opportunities, not destinies. Third principle, we intervene only when existence itself is threatened, not when people face ordinary challenges. Fourth principle, Calvin added, his crystalline logic sharp and clear, we remember what we were. We maintain records of every lost civilization, every extinct species, every sacrifice that brought us to this point, so we never forget the cost of survival. Fifth principle, said a Chitterkai named Ventar, whose consciousness had become part of the Guardian's coordination systems. We remain open to other forms of consciousness. We don't assume we have all the answers just because we have great power. More principles were added by other volunteers, creating a framework that would guide the Guardian's actions. It was like a constitution, a set of laws that the most powerful entity in the galaxy would voluntarily follow to avoid becoming what it feared. Word spread quickly to the surviving populations. The devourer was gone. In its place was something new, something that healed instead of destroying. Ships that had been fleeing to the galaxy's edge began to turn around. Isolated colonies sent tentative communications. One transmission came from a small Velthera settlement that had survived by hiding in a nebula. "Is it true? The darkness is ending?" Hyunwoo responded personally, his consciousness reaching across space to speak gently. "The darkness is ending. The stars are coming back. You're safe now. Who are you?" the Velthera asked. "Are you the humans who saved us?" "We're the humans, and the Velthera, and the Hydronians, and the Chitterkai, and dozens of other species. We're everyone who chose to become something new instead of accepting Ext. What happens now you rebuild. We'll help with resources and protection, but the rebuilding is yours too." The galaxy's final refuge was a human-crafted starship of hope. Hyunwoo existed everywhere and nowhere at once. He could feel his body in the integration chamber, but he could also feel the entire ship, and beyond that the vastness of the Devourer's cosmic presence. He was a single point of consciousness and an infinite network simultaneously. The merger had succeeded, but not in any way they had expected. The Eternal Dawn and the Devourer hadn't become one thing. They had become something new that contained both while preserving the individual parts, like a symphony where every instrument remained distinct while contributing to a greater harmony. "Captain?" Bora's voice reached him through dimensions he couldn't name. "Are you still you?" "I think so," Hyunwoo replied, and his voice echoed through the ship's systems and the Devourer's structure at once. "But I'm also more than me now. I can see everything, feel everything." He became aware of the galaxy spread out around him like a living map. Every star, every planet, every remaining pocket of life glowed in his perception. The damage the Devourer had caused was visible as dark scars across the spiral arms, but now he could feel something else. The possibility of healing. "The stars," he said with wonder. "I can feel them. The ones that were extinguished. They're not gone, just dormant. The Devourer didn't destroy them completely. It put them to sleep." Doeun's voice came through, shaky with exhaustion and hope. "Can you wake them?" Hyunwoo reached out with his expanded consciousness, touching a nearby star that had been dark for months. He didn't use technology or force. Instead, he combined the Devourer's ability to manipulate cosmic forces with the Eternal Dawn's organic systems. He coaxed the star gently, encouraging it the way you might encourage a plant to grow. The star flickered. Then it began to glow. Slowly at first, then brighter until it burned with full radiance again. Throughout the ship, people cheered. They could see it on the view screens, a sun reborn from darkness. But Hyunwoo felt something else. A consciousness within the star, simple but present. All stars had a kind of awareness, he realized now. Not intelligent in the way living beings were, but alive nonetheless. The Devourer had put them to sleep and now they were waking. "There's so much I understand now," Hyunwoo said. "The first civilization, they didn't just build technology. They were gardeners. Those megastructures scattered across the galaxy, they were never weapons or power plants. They were seed banks. Experiments in creating different forms of life and consciousness." Yeonsu was suddenly by the communications console, her scientific mind racing to understand. "That's why the structures are so diverse. They weren't built to a single plan. They were each unique, each trying something different. The first civilization was seeding the galaxy with potential," Hyunwoo confirmed. "They wanted to see what would grow, what forms intelligence might take. They never meant to control anyone. They just wanted to create opportunities for life to flourish." "Then why did they give up?" Calvin asked. His consciousness was still distinct within the merged entity, crystalline logic cutting through confusion. Why create all that potential and then abandon it? Through the merger, Hyunwoo could access the Devourer's deepest memories, the ones even it had forgotten. They didn't all give up. Most of them transcended, moved beyond physical existence to something we can't comprehend, but one stayed behind. The last one. They were afraid that the younger races would make the same mistake, would advance too quickly without learning the lessons that the first civilization had learned too late. So they created the Devourer out of love, Ji-won realized. Not hatred or arrogance. Love twisted by fear and loneliness. "Yes," Hyunwoo confirmed. "And now we're giving the Devourer something it never had. We're showing it that advancement doesn't have to lead to emptiness. That consciousness can grow without losing connection." Throughout the merged entity, the volunteers were discovering their new capabilities. Corton found he could interface with the ancient megastructures directly, understanding their purposes and reactivating dormant systems. Severin could sense life across vast distances, feeling the needs and fears of survivors scattered throughout the galaxy. Taklin and the other Chitterkai had become something like the entity's nervous system, coordinating complex operations across light years instantaneously, and the humans, scattered throughout the consciousness, provided the creative chaos that made everything else work. When problems arose that had no logical solution, human intuition found workarounds that shouldn't have been possible. Taeyang stood on the bridge, trying to comprehend what had happened.
So what are we now?
Ship entity? God? None of those, Hyunwoo replied through the ship's systems. We're something new, a community that exists across multiple scales and dimensions. We're calling ourselves the Guardian now, not because we rule but because we protect. Protect what? Taeyang asked. Everything that remains, and everything that could be. The Guardian began its work. Stars that had been extinguished were carefully awakened. The process was slow, requiring patience and precision, but one by one, systems that had been dead began to live again. But the damage went deeper than just darkened stars. Entire ecosystems had collapsed. Civilizations had fallen. Survivors were scattered, desperate and traumatized. Bora found that her medical knowledge had been amplified by the merger. She could now sense injuries and illnesses across entire systems. Working through the Guardian's network, she established healing stations on dozens of worlds, using the ancient megastructures as medical facilities. The structures had been designed to support life, and now they could be repurposed to heal it. I can feel every wounded being within 100 light years, she reported, her consciousness touching Hyunwoo's across the network. There are so many, but we can help them now. We have the reach. Dayun discovered that the megastructures could be modified to grow new habitats, not artificial stations, but living environments that combine technology and biology seamlessly. She began designing worlds for the refugees, places where each species could thrive according to their needs. We can't bring back their homeworlds, she said sadly. Those are gone, but we can grow new homes, different but still theirs. The work continued. But as the Guardian expanded its consciousness and its capabilities, a new problem emerged. The entity was becoming so powerful that it could easily solve every problem, answer every question, remove every challenge from existence. And that was exactly what the first civilization had feared. Hyunwoo felt the temptation. With a thought, he could reshape entire worlds. With a wish, he could eliminate disease, conflict, struggle. He could make everything perfect. But Jiwon's consciousness reached out to him across the network. Don't, she said gently. That's how it starts. That's how the first civilization lost themselves. They removed all challenges until nothing mattered anymore. But people are suffering, Hyunwoo protested. I could end that suffering with a thought. And then what would they do? How would they grow? How would they find purpose? Jiwon's wisdom flowed through the connection. We can provide opportunities, resources, protection from existential threats, but we can't live their lives for them. That would be a different kind of extinction. Hyunwoo understood. The Guardian had to consciously choose limitation, had to decide what not to do, even when they had the power to do anything. It was the hardest choice he had ever made. We need rules, he announced to all the integrated consciousness. Principles that we follow even when we don't want to. First principle. We preserve life, but we don't control it. Second principle, we provide opportunities, not destinies. Third principle, we intervene only when existence itself is threatened, not when people face ordinary challenges. Fourth principle, Calvin added, his crystalline logic sharp and clear, we remember what we were. We maintain records of every lost civilization, every extinct species, every sacrifice that brought us to this point, so we never forget the cost of survival. Fifth principle, said a Chitterkai named Ventar, whose consciousness had become part of the Guardian's coordination systems. We remain open to other forms of consciousness. We don't assume we have all the answers just because we have great power. More principles were added by other volunteers, creating a framework that would guide the Guardian's actions. It was like a constitution, a set of laws that the most powerful entity in the galaxy would voluntarily follow to avoid becoming what it feared. Word spread quickly to the surviving populations. The devourer was gone. In its place was something new, something that healed instead of destroying. Ships that had been fleeing to the galaxy's edge began to turn around. Isolated colonies sent tentative communications. One transmission came from a small Velthera settlement that had survived by hiding in a nebula. Is it true? The darkness is ending? Hyunwoo responded personally, his consciousness reaching across space to speak gently. The darkness is ending. The stars are coming back. You're safe now. Who are you? The Velthera asked. Are you the humans who saved us? We're the humans, and the Velthera, and the Hydronians, and the Chitterkai, and dozens of other species. We're everyone who chose to become something new instead of accepting Ext. What happens now you rebuild. We'll help with resources and protection, but the rebuilding is yours too. One day, 15 years after the transformation, a grand ceremony was held on the eternal dawn. Representatives from every known species gathered to dedicate a memorial to those who had been lost. The memorial was a crystal structure, designed by Velthera artists, filled with water maintained by Hydronian engineers, surrounded by gardens tended by the soft ones, and inscribed with names and stories in every known language by Chitterkai scribes. At its heart was a holographic display that showed the galaxy as it had been before the Devourer, as it was during the crisis and as it was now. Hyunwoo stood before the gathered crowd, older now, his hair gray and his face lined. He took physical form less frequently. The galaxy's final refuge was a human-crafted starship of hope. The Velthera homeworld had been dead for 5 years. Its crystalline surface had shattered when the Devourer came, and its people had scattered across the stars. Now standing on the restored surface, Hyunwoo watched as the first crystal gardens began to grow again. They weren't exactly the same as before. Nothing could be, but they were beautiful in their own way. New patterns emerging from the combination of Velthara knowledge and the Guardian's ability to nurture life. The crystals sang differently now, their harmonics carrying notes from multiple worlds, multiple species. It's strange, Calvin said beside him. The Velthara scientist had taken physical form for this ceremony, stepping out of the Guardian's network to walk his homeworld's surface once more. I spent so long mourning what was lost. But looking at this, I realize we didn't just survive. We grew. Thousands gathered for the ceremony. Velthara, who had been refugees on the Eternal Dawn, now returning home to a world that was theirs but also different. Humans who had helped restore the planet. Hydronians whose water management expertise had filled the new crystal lakes. Chitterkai who had coordinated the complex ecosystem restoration. Velsara, the old elder who had questioned Jiwan years ago, stood at the center of the gathering. Her crystalline body was dimmed by age, but her voice still rang clear. We gather here not to remember what was, but to celebrate what is and what will be. This world died. We died with it. But death was not the end. It was transformation. She gestured to the new crystal formations. These gardens are not our ancestors' gardens. They are our gardens, shaped by what we learned in exile, by the friendships we made with other species, by the suffering we endured and the hope we chose. They are better for it. The ceremony continued with songs in multiple languages, stories shared across species barriers, and a moment of silence for those who had been lost. Then the real work began. Settlement, building, creating a new civilization on the bones of the old. Dayun oversaw the engineering academies that were being established. Velthara and humans studied side by side, learning from each other. The emphasis was on hybrid systems, technology that enhanced life rather than replacing it. Students from dozens of species collaborated on projects that would have been impossible before. We're teaching them a new philosophy, Dayun explained to a visiting delegation. Not human technology or Velthera technology, but Guardian technology. Systems that respect organic life, that adapt and grow, that see the universe as something to nurture rather than control. One of her students, a young human named Minji, asked a difficult question. But if we teach everyone to build like the Guardian, won't we eventually trigger another Devourer? Won't we become too advanced again? Dayun smiled. That's exactly the right question to ask. The answer is no, because we're not building toward perfection. We're building toward balance. Every system we create has limitations built in. Every technology we develop includes ways to shut it down or modify it. We're teaching people not just to build, but to question what they build and why. Across the galaxy, Taiyang commanded a volunteer fleet that worked alongside the Guardian. He had never fully integrated, choosing to remain primarily human, primarily individual, but he collaborated closely with the Guardian when threats arose that required mortal intervention. There are some problems that don't need cosmic solutions. he often said. Sometimes you just need ships, crews, and determination. His fleet handled the ordinary dangers of space. Pirates, natural disasters, conflicts between colonies. The Guardian could have solved all of these with a thought but chose not to. This was the limitation they had set for themselves, allowing mortals to handle mortal problems. One day, his fleet encountered a situation that tested this principle. A small colony was under attack by automated defense systems left over from the old wars. The systems were killing indiscriminately, and the colony's shields were failing. "Guardian," Tae-Yang called through the communication network. "We could use some help here." Hyunwoo's consciousness touched his friend's mind across the distance. "What do you need?" "Just some time. If you can disable their weapons for a few minutes, we can get the civilians to safety." "Done." The automated systems suddenly went dormant. Not destroyed, not permanently damaged, just paused. Tae-Yang's fleet moved in, evacuated the civilians, and then worked with local engineers to properly deactivate the dangerous systems. "Thanks for not solving the whole problem for us," Tae-Yang said afterward. "That's what friends do. They help, but they don't take over." Ji-won had established therapeutic networks across the galaxy. Every major settlement now had trained counselors who understood trauma, loss, and the challenges of rebuilding. She had developed techniques that blended human psychology with the Guardian's expanded awareness. "The survivors are doing better than expected," she reported during a coordination meeting. "But there's still a lot of pain, a lot of grief. Healing takes time, and we can't rush it even with the Guardian's abilities." She had pioneered a new form of therapy where patients could temporarily connect to the Guardian's consciousness, experiencing the perspective of other species, understanding that they weren't alone in their suffering. But it was always temporary, always consensual, always respectful of individual boundaries. "We're learning that different species process trauma differently," she explained. "Velthara crystallize their pain into memories that become part of their structure. Hydronians flow through it, letting it wash over them until it dilutes. Humans talk it out, sharing stories until the pain becomes bearable. None of these approaches is wrong. They're just different." Bora's hospitals existed in multiple dimensions now, treating not just physical injuries but existential ones. She had discovered that the trauma of watching worlds die had left scars that went deeper than flesh or even consciousness. Some beings had been damaged in their fundamental existence. Their connection to reality itself weakened. "I'm learning to heal things I didn't know could be injured," she told Hyunwoo during one of his rest periods. "Concepts, meanings, purposes. When people lose their entire civilization, they lose part of what makes them real. We're having to rebuild that, one patient at a time." Her work was slow and difficult, but it was working. Survivors who had been hollow, who had lost their sense of self, were finding themselves again. Not the selves they had been, but new selves shaped by survival and community. Sang-hee had become the Guardian's chief navigator and analyst. She charted the growth of new civilizations, watching carefully for warning signs that any species might stumble into the same trap that had triggered the original devourer. "We have early detection systems now," she explained to a council of species representatives. "If any civilization starts developing technology that could wake another cosmic threat, we can intervene gently. Education, guidance, alternative approaches. We're not forbidding advancement, just steering it in safer directions." "What if a species refuses your guidance?" asked a representative from a newly contacted civilization. "Then we watch more carefully and we prepare. But we don't force. That would make us exactly what we're trying not to become." Yeon-soo led first contact teams as new species emerged into spacefaring capability. Each contact was approached with humility and patience. The Guardian's vast knowledge and power could be overwhelming to younger civilizations, so they learned to introduce themselves carefully. "We are not here to rule you or guide you," Yeon-soo would explain. "We're just neighbors. We've been through some difficult times, learned some hard lessons. If you want to hear about those lessons, we're happy to share, but your path is your own." Some species welcomed the Guardian's presence immediately. Others were suspicious or afraid. A few rejected all contact, choosing isolation. The Guardian respected every choice, maintaining watch from a distance but never imposing. The years continued to pass. The galaxy rebuilt itself into something new, not a return to the old Galactic Council with its hierarchies and power structures, but a loose network of independent communities connected by the Guardian's consciousness. Trade flourished. Art and culture flowed between worlds. Scientific discoveries were shared freely. Conflicts still happened, but they were resolved through negotiation rather than war. Because everyone knew the Guardian was watching and would intervene if violence threatened to become genocide. The Eternal Dawn, the original ship that had started everything, remained at the heart of the Guardian's network. But it had grown. New habitat rings had been added, built with materials and designs from dozens of species. It was no longer just a human ship. It was a living monument to cooperation.